The other day, we were standing at our regular stand-up meeting, watching our beloved pet cat Upeka play with a cat toy, and someone was saying we need to brainstorm topics for the talks before lunch. And someone said, "Why don't someone give a talk on cats and attachment?" And I said, "Oh, I think I kind of am talking about that today. So let's see where this goes." So I never had a pet my entire life. When I was little, I pestered my dad and mom, of course, to get us a pet. And I think I got what might be called the extreme Chinese immigrant response, which is to tell you about how bad things were in China so you should not ask again. So in this instance, my father told me the story of how my grandmother had a stepmother when she was very little. And her task, issued by said stepmother, was to go beat the cats around the house to death, because they would steal food from the family, and they were very poor peasants, and that's why everyone immigrated to China anyhow. So yes, that completely broke my grandmother's heart, who afterwards constantly fed cats in the neighborhood. So that was the story as to why we couldn't get a pet. Basically that they're a luxury, they're like pests maybe, and people back then already didn't have enough to eat, so why are you asking for a pet? So that was the end of that. So fast forward years later, at the very first Dharma talk I attended back in Singapore, it was taught by Ken Rinpoche Lama Lundrup, the former abbot of Kopan Monastery. And he was giving a very traditional teaching on Shantideva's engaging in the Bodhisattva's deeds, chapter 6. So I was very new. I just thought it was like a literature class, he's reading a poem. It just happens not to be about love and attachment, but about the disadvantages of anger. And so, it was really, I found it very interesting, stimulating, not quite sure what to make of everything culturally yet. And at the end, everyone was kind of standing and, showing our respect as he was walking out. And someone kind of rushed forward with their pet. They had a dog, and they're like, "Rinpoche, Rinpoche, can you bless my dog? Plus, can you give my dog a name?" And I just thought, this is what you do at the end of a Dharma talk? Like, he's been telling us about cultivating fortitude, and okay, so I was just kind of surprised by all that. And then years later, I recounted this story to Venerable Children, who I think reflected back my arrogance to me very gently, just saying, Rinpoche had to meet the students where they are. Yeah, and that for this person, the name of their pet might be their main contact with the Dharma every day. So if Rinpoche names the dog Zopa, fortitude, for example, that might remind them every day they have to cultivate fortitude. So, enough of your who are these people who listen to teachings and ask the teacher to name their dog, right? So that was something for me to think about. Anyhow, all this was on my mind because very recently I received an email from our very dear Dharma friend Yulia, who is in the Ukraine. And she was just sharing what was going on with her life. She lives in Dnipro that has been bombed, and she doesn't have electricity most of the day. But she had just gotten a new pet cat. And she sent pictures of this cat. And she said, "My cat is named Shanti," which means peace. And suddenly, this whole act of having a pet, nurturing life, naming the pet after your values, in the middle of this horrible, chaotic war where she can basically, all you can do is survive, right? But having a pet in that situation is like an act of resistance and hope. So it just really sank in for me, like, made me see this whole act of having a pet and caring for the pet and what you name the pet. It's actually part of your practice. And so in this very fraught year, maybe it's time for us to get a dog for the Abbey. We could name the dog Democracy, expressing our hopes. And then we can go on a tour and we can sing the song "You and Me and a Dog Named Democracy" as you spread the good word. And hopefully that will come to pass this year. No, please don't donate a dog to us. I'm sorry. This is just a talk about a metaphor, okay? You never know. Sometimes you give these talks and dogs appear. No. Joking.